Well, the big question now is what this means, if anything, for Sir Mo Farah, because Salazar has been found guilty of charges relating to doping. There are no charges, no allegations even levelled against Farah. He's never failed a drugs test. He's always maintained that he's totally committed to being a clean athlete and is committed to clean sport more broadly. But you've got to look at the timescale he was with Salazar and what happened to his career in that time. He linked up with him at the Nike Oregon project in 2011, and within 7 months of that move, Farah had taken almost 45 seconds off his personal best for the 10,000 metres, and he upgraded 7th place at the 2009 World Championships into 5,000 metre gold at the World Championships in 2011. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean there was anything at all untoward going on with this specific athlete. And it should be noted that despite all of Salazar's wrongdoing, he was clearly an exceptional coach. But do you think in terms of Farah's legacy, we're going to have people now looking at what were incredible achievements going, okay, but your coach, at least, was cheating?
You look at, it's like I said before, it's about the 1%ers. And as an athlete, as a top athlete, perhaps, he is totally legal. He's been tested, and I've been on that, believe it or not, in rugby, they brought in the testing schedule, which they do for all athletes, because it became an Olympic sport, 24/7, where you have to let them know exactly where you are between 6 o'clock and 10 o'clock. And it's a nightmare. Say you're out with a friend drinking and suddenly you go, oh, actually, I want to stay at your house. You have to email them straight away his address.
I've had a beer.
And just say where you're going to be. Because if they turn up at your house and you're not there, that's a strike. And if you're at training with the club and all of a sudden they go, actually, we're going to go and train at this school for publicity things. Suddenly you don't think, you just jump in the car, go there to train. They turn up at the club and you haven't told them because it's your responsibility. That's a strike, and, with Mo Farah, he would have been tested massively, with Lance Armstrong, with everything going on through that as well, they know how they're testing. So, Mo, fantastically well, he is a knight now. So you think to yourself, you like to think that he is clean, and perhaps the coach has just tried out on other people and tried the boundaries, and Mo stayed within those boundaries, but he did really push those limits because he is a massive icon for British athletics.
It would be absolutely terrible if he was found to have done anything wrong. Important to stress that there are no allegations and certainly absolutely no proof whatsoever that he did. But back in 2015, BBC Panorama first made allegations against Salazar. Now, Mo Farah was aware of that, as we all were, because this was a publicly broadcast television show, and he kept working with Salazar until 2017, saying completely happy with the situation. In 2015, Farah was asked whether he was reconsidering working with the controversial coach.
He said to me, Mo, I can assure you this, trust me. These are just allegations, I can prove all this, just wait till it comes out, and it will come out. And I was like, are you sure? And he said, yes. And that's when sort of I just left it. And for me, I just wanted to continue running.
Sir Mo Farah there, who has today released a statement responding to the USADA's findings. He said, I'm relieved that the USADA has, after 4 years, completed their investigation into Alberto Salazar. I left the Nike Oregon project in 2017, but as I've always said, I have no tolerance for anyone who breaks the rules or crosses a line. A ruling has been made, and I'm glad there has finally been a conclusion. He's saying all the right things. He's making all the right noises, but it should be noted that he broke from Salazar, whose own background as an athlete and as a coach was in marathon running, in 2017, after Farah had very, very publicly made this switch to running on roads, to focusing on the marathon away from track events. Now, again, he maintains it was purely for family reasons. He wanted his kids to grow up in the UK. But at the very least, you'd have to say by staying with Salazar, he was a bit naive.
It was naive, but when you're winning and it's a winning formula, when he's in there, you got to think, does he know what's really going on? Has he stayed within the boundaries? He has, because he's been tested and he hasn't been found positive. You want to be with the best coaches, and sometimes the best coaches do think outside the box. And it worked for him. Like you said, he's gone from 9th in 2009, I think it was, to first, to winning golds. Every time he went out, he just won races. And And that's because, he's got to put his hand up and say it was the coach. And it's come out now, obviously, the coach has not been completely within those boundaries. And he split from him in 2017. Did he jump just in time? You don't know, but you got to look at Mo as an athlete, not as the coach that's coached him as well. And he's been tested massively. Like I said before, with Lance Armstrong, the biggest athlete in the world, to be found guilty. Suddenly, you got to look at him. He hasn't been found guilty here, so we are pushing towards what's going on, what's happened. And he's been our best athlete, really, or one of the best athletes we've had. And I think it's quite a British thing sometimes to actually go after people and say, right, let's try and knock them down.
Rather than celebrating the brilliance of someone like Sir Mo Farah, who was so impressive at London 2012, has been since 2011, and is one of the great sporting names of this country.
Yeah, and, it's like with Wiggins as well. As soon as Wiggins won the Tour de France, there's a witch hunt after him. Oh, he's got to be guilty. And it's as if they went after him just to find something. And I think we do that quite well in Britain. We build people up, and then suddenly, as soon as we have a stick to try and whack them, that's what we try and do.
Well, in terms of what the Nike Oregon project was actually found guilty of, we know they broke the rules on infusions. We know they handed out prescriptions to athletes when there was no legitimate medical need for them. But above all else, we know they broke rules relating to the supply and usage for athletes of testosterone. Now, in your career, was testosterone ever something you had administered? What are the effects like?
No, not during my playing career, there hasn't. Afterwards, I've used it. Middle-age spread. It's a good way to get rid of middle-age spread, and that, I must admit, and keep you away from other things that you need to take to keep performing in other places. But it's we were in the boundaries as such. I can remember though looking at some athletes that were on the asthma drugs. They did have asthma. Been to the doctors, they've been prescribed it properly, and they were some of the fittest people in the team. I was just thinking, why can't I have asthma? Don't get me wrong, I don't want to be ill and have asthma. But you see them, suddenly they were like top of the charts on the long distance running and the fitness tests and that. You think, hang on a minute. So, but we were well in there. We were taking colostrum. We were having caffeine drinks right up to the limit, being told whatever you do, you cannot have any more caffeine outside of this because you could fail. So whatever sport you're in at the top levels, people are always trying to push those limits. And the England rugby squad, I think we were probably one of the first in the world of rugby to do that. We had the full-time nutritionists on there, and in 2000 I think 99 up to 2003, we were sort of trying to lead the way as such, and really trying to push those boundaries, legally, but just what they can do. We were being put to bed in the afternoon, 2003 World Cup pre-camp, giving like cups of colostrum, which is the first milk out of a cow or a woman. So they see that as the highest form of protein, and they were giving us that sort of medication, not medication as such, but nutrition to try and get us above the rest, and that's what they're doing. Athletics is even higher than that, to be honest. When you look at it, you look at tenths of seconds in some of them athletes that can make the difference.
Well, this is the thing. These are sports of fine margins, and it should be noted that while Salazar has been found guilty of various offences, as I say, particularly relating to testosterone, a lot of the stuff he was doing was legal. He's about pushing those limits and is getting as close to them as you can to get his athletes as much of a legal advantage as possible. And that doesn't sound particularly nice. It doesn't sound particularly moral, but it was quite literally his job up until the point where he crossed that line. We know that runners were given thyroid and asthma drugs and other substances as well, which were technically legal in most cases, but weren't necessarily required to address a medical need. Now, important to stress again that we don't know whether that was the case with Sir Mo Farah. It very possibly wasn't. But another thing we now know that Salazar did was testing just how much testosterone he could give someone without getting a positive test back. This is something in a rather dystopian way he was trying out on his own sons, going, well, let's see how far we can go and I'll test you and we'll see where you get over the limit. For you, as someone who's competed at the very highest level of an elite sport, how valid is it to be not necessarily breaking the rules, but bending them and seeing how far they can stretch before they break?
I mean, you've got to keep yourself ahead. That's what you've got to do, and you know what's in. And at one stage, you as an athlete, you're there, and you've got people around you, your coaches, your nutritionists. And I must admit, I totally trusted them. They were there for a reason. They tell you to take something, and you take it. You know, if you want to just keep pushing yourself. I was one of the players that, you know, I'm here. You trust them completely. They know what the drug rules are. You know, I always see it as when you go and have your car serviced. I don't go in there and question everything I do about my car. I know it's my body, but I just went out there. I concentrated on playing, and they were there to help me get my body in a better shape, and mentally and physically ahead of my opposition. And that's what their job was to do. And personally, I went with it.
Well, I think that's a really fascinating point, because for me, one of the most troubling pieces of testimony in this Salazar report is one former athlete who worked with him at this Oregon centre, who was given a course of prohibited substances, but had been told, he says, that this had been approved by all of the governing bodies. So he went, yeah, fair enough, doc, because you trust the doctor, which is quite shocking that people potentially were duped into doping. But from your point of view, as someone who has seen how close to the line these things can go firsthand, and you also hear the rumours and the judgments about the likes of Salazar, when you're watching athletics, do you trust it? Do you trust that all of the quick runners you see, for example, are clean?
No, you obviously got to be careful what you say here, but you just look at some of the gains some of these have, and you just think it's just not physically possible to do that naturally. You know, sometimes you get an athlete that's young, and all of a sudden they have a big growth spurt, or they come from, you know, teenage life into manhood as such. You can see how that's possible. You know, you get late developers and things like that. But some of these athletes you see, they're just average, and all of a sudden they disappear off the scene. Then they come back with a bang, and you can just see in the muscle mass, even like the bone structures and that change on some of it. That you think to yourself, you know, that can't be natural. But it's one of them. Sometimes you just got to take your hat off and just look and think, I enjoy watching this. I want to see how fast a body can run. I want to see how hard they can push themselves. And, you know, taking drugs sometimes, some people think you take drugs and it's easy. It's not. Sometimes you have to train more. You've got to be harder to train. I'm not sticking up for drug cheats because it's totally wrong. But for someone that's going to do it, they've got to put themselves through a lot of pain to actually get the gains.